Jim lives in Atlanta. This benefit that we're doing to support the fires.
Yeah.
This is the man that's making it happen. He flew out here today to see the space in advance of the show, to see the work and like catch a vibe. But he's
amazing.
Doing incredible. I mean, he's so generous in giving us his space to do the show.
It's worked out really well.
And
I'm so tickled. I was just telling Mike that I was like, can you believe this is actually happening?
It's happening. And so basically, Meredith saw me open the gallery and kind of keep the doors open for 2 years. And there was this kind of perfect timing scenario where she was looking to kind of start her own gallery, and I was desperate for a partner in this gallery to actually take on, really envisioning the dream that I initially had that I was only partially able to enact upon because nobody can do it all. And we changed the name to Moskowitz Bayse. That's when we did a bunch of renovations to the first kind of set of renovations to the space. We added the walls, which really kind of mitigated the exhibition space from the street, because before you could it was like a fishbowl. You could look in from the front glass and see the entire space.
Gotcha.
Which is really a hard way to hang an exhibition.
Yes.
Once we partnered and it became Moskowitz Bayse, I always say that's why it depends on who you ask, because it's now been open for, Moskowitz Bayse has been open for 10 years. And since then, it really started to become the thing that I always wanted it to be. But I really, really needed Meredith, somebody who has very different skill sets than I do. In fact, we're almost like a 100% complement of the others' skill sets. And it's what has made this so viable for so long,
And now you're up to 24 artists.
Yeah. So it's pretty wild. I mean, that was, it's a long, slow burn, Some of those artists I've been working with for a very long time, and some of them, we've taken on in the last few years. But a lot of the artists that we work with, we are now on the 3rd, 4th, 5th, even 6th solo exhibition with, and it's usually about 1.5 to 2 years in between an exhibition for an artist. So growing with our artists is important.
Yes. Showing them that you're committed to them.
Yeah. And committed to the evolution of a practice. I think there's a lot of different ways to have a gallery, but in this case, we've always wanted to have a long-term commitment to our artists, and that means kind of supporting them when they want to experiment, explore, go beyond what something else was. I think a lot of the time people if an artist is successful, they can get bad information from their gallery that says, just keep making this successful thing. That's just something that Meredith and I are really not interested in. We don't want to tell our artists what to make. We don't see that as our job at all. Show you the rest of the space.
It's so nice to see in person, because I saw it.
Oh yeah, that's totally different.
Yeah, whole different thing.
I mean, these are really exceptional, just objects of.
I don't know that I even knew that they were photographs.
Yeah, so the back is a photograph, and obviously the front is this ceramic ladder that was broken into 25 pieces and then fired and then re-put back together. I mean, it's a very kind of poetic gesture. This whole show is called No Condition is Permanent, and it's just all about how things are not, time can move, manipulate things, have things go away, come back. There's trying to hold on to something, and it's not really, that going to be that way forever.
Right.
So this broken ladder is obviously very idiomatic of that idea. I can support an artist studio. I can be a sounding board for them. It's a very, very privileged position to be in an artist studio, and to see how things are made and get into the psychology of that. And we take that privilege very seriously, and that does mean that you are not supposed to impinge upon the creative process. So that long-term representation, that kind of shepherding of an artist's career is something that is where Meredith and I overlap. We are both extremely interested in that component of what this is. A lot goes into making something even as nuanced as this, that is not just a standard photograph. You have these small cuts and points of relief that actually add more shadows and more dimension.
Yeah, you can't figure this out.
It's so difficult from a photograph.
I mean, you don't have any
I mean,
idea.
it kind of it ruins the whole idea because photographs flatten space.
Right.
You know, so it's like
Which is
this
completely
whole
the opposite of what this is doing.
Yeah,
That's
and
amazing.
it's exactly the exact opposite. It's a photograph that is trying to talk about the idea of illusionistic depth in a photograph, right? But you can't see that in a photograph. So it's a two-part epoxy resin, and it looks like clay. You mix these two parts together, and then you have about 15 minutes before the epoxy clay just hardens, rock hard, which is wild. So.
Oh, I just love it. I couldn't tell.
And then he paints it with watercolor.
Yeah, it's got this softness to it that I couldn't tell if it was hard or soft in photographs.
Yeah.
We met at the Armory,
Yes.
and you kind of went out on a limb, I thought, by showing one artist.
Mm-hmm.
You were showing...
Yeah, Aaron Elvis Jupin.
And you committed to him. I thought it was a very strong presence there and cut through some of the noise that was going on.
Totally.
At the Armory. It was very, very strong.
Yeah.
I thought.
That was a rare circumstance for us to be able to, I mean, we do solo exhibitions a lot at fairs to try and do exactly that, to break through the chatter. But that particular exhibition is something that doesn't happen very often, which is to say, Aaron came to us with this idea, this fully functioning idea, expressly to be used at an art fair. Normally artists are like, I don't want to do an art fair. It's kind of like you got to pull some teeth. The art fairs are kind of boring. They're long in the tooth. It's not as exciting as it was 10 years ago, blah, blah, blah. There's all kinds of reasons why an artist, also keep in mind, if an artist works for a year or two on a body of work, an art fair lasts 4 days. So the proposition to an artist of saying, hey, you've worked for 2 years and we're going to show this work for 4 days, kind of not that exciting.
We've got to talk about Trey, I think.
Right, yeah. Yeah, who
is the curator of a corporate collection in Atlanta, and had been wanting to get something from Moskowitz Bayse.
Yeah.
And I called him and said, would you guarantee a purchase? And he said, yes. And he said, what's the gallery? And I told him, he goes, oh my God, I've been after them forever.
Aww.
News to me. It's great news.
Great news.
You don't think about it as being hard to find on the internet. Like, you never got
Well,
it
he said, I was looking at a drawing of Aaron's.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And he said, you told me you bought one. Which one is it? And he said, don't tell me. And he said, is it with the, and I said, he said, I can't believe you got that.
That's hysterical.
He had his eyes on that.
Oh, that's amazing. Jupin had been thinking about this idea to subvert an art fair space for a long time. He was very keen on this kind of installation that involved the facade of a house that was gonna like change the way that you navigate the space, and you have to kind of go through a doorway to get inside of it, and all of these things that were inherently reliant upon the format of an art fair, the kind of grid, box-like, convention center style, homogenized version of art looking. He was like, how can I fuck with this? And that was great. We were like, this is something that we are insane for supporting, but also like that's the thing that gets us the most excited, So it's like we went on a limb thinking like people will take notice of this because it's definitely not a normal art fair presentation.
Myself.
All right.
Off it goes.
Oh, I guess.
To 24 Atlanta. I'm excited. It was great fun to watch out the window how people responded. And you did a
Totally.
great job of getting that in space.
Yeah, it was important.
It was very important. And that, I know that was your doing.
Yeah, kids running around it, poking their heads in the holes, and I mean, I think that is the thing that really lights up Jupin's Christmas tree. He's so keen on getting people to kind of react and interact with his work, and that was a really cool thing to see.
Yeah, it got me on your...
Yeah, it brought us together, right?
Right, completely. The part of the other thing that we're doing here, and I think we should mention, is that how was it during the fires? I mean, I kept thinking the smell, the air, I mean, the quality of the air, the different things burning have different, I mean, was it hard to go out?
For sure, yeah. I mean, for at least we're in Hollywood, and at least for a week it was, people will tell you a lot longer than that, but the actual odor in the air is about a week. I'm from Southern California. I grew up in the valley, 45 minutes north of here, and fire is something that I was so familiar with. So when it first started happening, kind of wasn't thinking that much of it, which is a really kind of surreal experience to look back on now, because I've never in the history of living through fire season in Southern California experienced anything remotely like that. A wind event of 100-mile-an-hour sustained winds and multiple fronts of a fire erupting. I mean, it's at a certain point.
40,000 acres.
Yeah, and I mean that number is just hard to wrap your head around. But when you also think about the geography of the fact that there were at a certain point there were 4, 5, depending on how you count it, simultaneous fires going on in different geographies, not just it's a mile down the road, 12 miles away from each other, 4 miles away from each other, 15, 25 miles away from another one. And think about, you just think about a firefighting crew that was growing by the day because people were coming from all over the place. I mean, all over the place. Firefighters, their numbers grew, which was important because they were trying to it was like a hydra. I mean, I would never use this term lightly, but it was heroic. I mean, the firefighting efforts was unbelievable that they did. The aerial support, it was just coordinated and the best they could possibly do. I keep having this vision, this picture of, because we're glued to the television or my computer watching the local news because they've got the chopper from the air, right. And I've never, it's this is part of living in the modern world. You've never been able to encounter a fire like that. It's just the strangest thing to be able to watching. You're this is 10 miles away, and the sky is black, and this is why, and yet here it is, and they're trying to do it. But there was footage of in the Palisades when they were trying to, during that first night. Everyone talks about how they ran out of water, but the sad truth is that there were these videos I'll never forget. 100-mile-an-hour winds. There's a house here, and the wind is coming from them like this, and they've got a fire hose with high pressure. The water's coming out of the fire hose. It is coming out of the fire hose, and then the wind just pulls it in its direction. It never touched the house. When you have a 100-mile-an-hour sustained wind, a fire hose isn't going to be able to do anything to get water where you want it to go.
I hadn't even thought of that.
He has this lovely space in Atlanta, and basically 6 days after the fires were happening, he called me out of the blue and was like, we're all really hurting here in Atlanta for people in LA, and we don't know what to do. Yeah, who to help, he said, I had this crazy idea, just hear me out.
You picked Grief and Hope as the charity to do this with. Tell us, you and Meredith picked that.
Yeah.
And what was... I think Meredith felt very strongly about that they
Totally.
were doing the right thing, and
it's interesting. We're an art gallery, and we wanted to kind of try and stay in our lane. And Grief and Hope is this incredible initiative that's being supported by the Brick, which is an LA nonprofit here, a very known LA entity. There were so many artists and art collectors affected by this fire. in really, and to say catastrophic ways would be to putting it lightly. Talking about that, you think about if you're an artist and you've got your archive and you've been working for 50 years and your whole archive is burned, your whole entire studio is
Well,
burned.
and a lot of artists collect too, or exchange
Yes,
works.
and those are always pieces, right, that are so personal,
Right.
and those narratives gone, you
Right.
know. I mean, I think a lot of people were kind of paralyzed, wondering what to do.
I think a lot of people immediately gave their
Yes.
thing, and then they were like,
Okay, we did that. We
"Yeah, we did
donated.
that, we move on." And that's something that, I mean, in all of this conversation around how to give and where to give and how to make this all happen, you know, I learned from like the development perspective of the difference between relief and recovery, which I didn't know. And so to move it into the recovery territory where it's longer form, and it's like after the initial like raise as much money as fast as you can and spread it
Send
out.
all your used clothes to Pasadena in piles and piles.
Yeah, and then what are you going to do with it when they're like, we actually don't? This is too. Stop sending clothes. That was wild. They were like, please stop. Like we have that stuff, but it is true that this recovery versus relief. In trying to think of what you can do to help the art community, specifically in LA, Grief and Hope was an initiative that was started expressly for that purpose, and they're going about it in a way that is. It's with a lot of care and consideration. You know, they're using their resources to collect information, not just on, you know, who can like apply and get information from them, but they're doing their own thing to try and actually, you know, put their resources to people that need it and find the people that were affected through our own community.
And we also spoke earlier, I remember at the Armory that we spoke about the man that had brought us together.
Yeah, Anthony.
Yeah.
I always tell people that when Anthony introduces me to somebody, I pay more attention. It's true. I mean, he's special, but also that was like, I don't know. You meet hundreds, if not thousands, of people at an art fair. So,
Right.
you know, who you decide to kind of like, you know, who you connect with is always important. You usually want to pull in those relationships, but yeah, you wouldn't have been there without him. So,
Right.
of
Right.
course.
Mike was kind enough to meet me at the Armory that year.
Oh.
And we walked around very quickly, and then Anthony said, I want to go back one more time and see this other space. I was like, okay, because you say okay with
Yeah.
him,
Oh,
right?
yeah. You just say
You
yes.
just say okay.
Yeah.
And so we went back, and that's how it all started.
Yeah.
I remember telling you that if you think this guy's good,
Yeah.
we have
Something in common.
very common ground, because he has been such a force in my life.
Yeah.
I sent one of Meredith's invites. I don't know if you've contacted her or not, or if you will when you're going to New York
Yeah.
in a couple days.
Yeah. I'll definitely get in touch with him.
But I sent him one of the invites that she so beautifully designed to tell him that, you know, this really would not be going on if it hadn't been
Yeah.
for him, which I think is pretty. I don't know that he has any idea the force that he.
You know, that's the beauty of Anthony, is that he's extremely humble. You know, humble to who. I mean, it's just amazing. You know, he's full of stories and full of. To me, it's like a living legend of art history. You know, and then, but if I say that to him, I think he would recoil. You know, and you know, that's just like real humbleness. That's why he is where he is. But I got into this business because I have a fondness for art history, and I really care about lineage, and I am fascinated by the kind of arc of even, you know, galleries and art dealers and this ecosystem. It's a very complex and intertwined history, and I intend to be a part of it, and I'm invested in that idea, and to be invested in that idea means that you also are responsible. May be too heavy of a word, but I think responsible to uphold certain values and standards that I think that Anthony is like a shining beacon of. You know, it's hard to find actually when you think of it. And so yeah, when you find those people, you got to keep them close, right?